Welcome to Innovate for Impact, an informative mini-series brought to you by Tania Gomez Consulting. In this series, we embark on a journey to explore the remarkable innovations that are shaping the landscape of the NDIS for a more inclusive future. Join us as we uncover inspiring stories of visionary individuals, organisations and technologies that are revolutionising the way we approach disabilities.
So, Kristi, welcome to Innovate for Impact. Today we're here to talk about Live Your Best Life and the innovative approach you have to supporting children with disability. To start with, can you walk me through the work you do at Live Your Best Life and the supports you provide to children with disability?
Sure, thanks for having me, Tania. So at Live Your Best Life, we predominantly support young children and young adults up until around that 30 age bracket. We focus very heavy on the autism spectrum space. So that's my favourite thing. That's what I do best, and I think it's really important to stick to areas that you know best. So we currently do, we have an after-school program that I'm really passionate about because there's a lot of children with autism and disabilities that don't fit mainstream USHs, so there's just nowhere for them to go in the afternoons. We provide that service so that we give the children somewhere to go. The parents know that their children are safe, but we're also capacity building, which you wouldn't get in a regular USH. Then we also have SIL houses that we run, and that for me, I'm very passionate about level 3 autism and big behaviours. That's my other specialty and something that I absolutely love. And we find that currently there are just plenty of mainly young men, but young women too, that are being rejected by other companies because they're just put in the too hard basket. And so we want to provide a safe space for them to live and, again, capacity build and be cared for safely, because it's really important to have a safe space for especially those children that and young adults that are level 3. So we also have a day program, and I'm very proud of our day program. On the market, we see a lot of day programs that are being marketed where they are, there's not a lot of capacity building for me, and it's just a lot of going to, 10-pin bowling, doing arts and craft, that type of stuff. Our guys have so much more capacity than that. They can be doing things in a day program that can set them up to be living fulfilled lives, that they can even go into a SIL and maybe not need quite as much support as they would have had they not been doing these types of programs. So that's something that's really important. And not everybody wants to do swimming on a Tuesday, or not everybody wants to go and do arts and craft. I think that you should have a day program that's tailored to the group, so that there's everyone's together, but also tailored to personal needs and likes, and that's really important. So we tend to have a day program that caters to that. I also don't like seeing like 70-year-old people with young people that are 20. I feel like there has to be set day programs where you've got them catered to needs of our younger people and then catered to needs of our older participants. So that's something that I'm also very proud of. And we have a school holiday program. So again, not everybody fits USH, which runs in school holidays. So we set a school holiday program that our children can come to. They can have all day there. They can also do half days, and we run programs catered to that, and then we have outings so that we're learning how to be social out in the community, and then we're doing other skills back at our hub, because we have a nice big hub that we run that from. So that's something that's also important to me. And we also do STA, so we do that for over 18s and under 18s, again always with the focus of capacity building. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're really catering for children, but also the autism community. Why are you passionate about supporting that community?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to get emotional already. Sorry. For me personally, I've raised a daughter who has autism, and my husband also has autism and bipolar, and our eldest granddaughter is 7, and she's level 2 autism, PDA, ADHD and high anxiety disorder. I've always been passionate about this even before we had our daughter. It's just something that is really important to me. I see so much. There's just so many things and that these children can do, and often there's limitations put on them, and that's not fair. So I want to see our children just flourish and be living their best life. For me, we've also done lots of, my husband and my family have done lots of volunteer work over the years in this space, and it wasn't until 8 years ago that I went into the industry fully, because I knew that once I did, my children needed to be older, so that I could give everything that I wanted to my work, and I did that, and I started working for a big org with STA, and in that time frame I met a young man called Ashton, who I worked with for 8 years. He's level 3 autism, non-verbal, and he can be quite violent. So nobody really wanted to work with Ashton because he was again in the too hard basket. He'd been rejected from quite a few companies. The org that I worked for was supporting him, but they were having trouble to find support workers that were happy to work with him. So I worked with him, and I ended up having to go to school with him 4 days a week as well, because school was saying to us that he was in the too hard basket for them. So we fought that, and I went to school with him, and I did STA with him, and in the end I was spending 4 days a week straight with him to be able to get him through school and have him through STA, so that mum and dad could have the break that they required, because it was a pretty full-on situation. From there it became very evident that he needed to go into SIL. Again, nobody really wanted to take him on because he would have to live in a house on his own, and if you know the industry, SIL houses are best set up with at least three people in them. When you've got one person, they don't tend to make the money that big companies are looking for. So I said to the mum and dad, who I have a very close relationship with, that I would buy a house and put him in it and set up a company, and that's what I did. And that was 3 years ago in April, and from there we've flourished, and my big boy's living his best life, and we're just about to put a flatmate in for him. It's taken 3 years, but we've got him there with hard work, and he's getting his housemate. So yeah, so that's why I do what I do, and that's how my company was born, was through this remarkable young man.
It's an amazing story.
Thank you.
I think that lots of people in the disability space go in because they're inspired by that one person, and it sounds like that was definitely your inspiration and what set you on this journey. Mm-hmm. With your approach and trying to be different than the big orgs and other organisations out there, what is the main problem that you're solving with your approach?
Yep. So for me personally, I work with every client first, and I meet them first. So I meet the families, I meet the client. I think the big problem that we see with big orgs is that they just do the paperwork. They get the phone call. They do the paperwork. They don't necessarily even meet the families. They don't. There's just no human contact, and then the support worker is sent out. So there's no training the support worker with that participant, especially if it's a high needs participant. Yeah. It is really unsafe, and I see it all the time, and that's where people get hurt. That's where the participant gets hurt, the worker gets hurt, and the participant doesn't flourish because they're essentially being babysat. Yeah. So I take this very seriously, and I'm extremely passionate about this. And I'll get emotional again, and I'm really sorry, but it's just such an important thing to me. And so I meet every single participant with their family first. I go over, sometimes I'm there for 2 or 3 hours. It just depends. Sometimes I might be there for an hour, but it generally goes into that 2 or 3 hour mark because I'm excited to hear about their family, and they're excited to talk about their remarkable child, young adult that they've got, because they don't always get that. So often when you have a child with a disability, people don't want to hear what's happening for you, and I do. So we go in, we talk about that, and we work out what the goals are for their child, young adult. And if the participant's capable to speak for themselves, then obviously they're there talking to us as well. We don't always have that because we have a lot of non-verbal children, so obviously their families are their advocates. But And then once I get a feel for exactly what type of support they're looking for, what they're looking for their child moving forward, and what the goals are, then from there, I then do, say, 3 to 4 shifts with that participant myself, because I'm happy to back myself. I know I think I'm really good at my job, and I think I can read these children really well. So with the help of their families and the work that I do first, I then can match my support staff with the right child. And then from there, at my cost, I then do more buddy shifts with that particular worker and other workers, depending on how many I'm choosing for their team. And that's another important thing, to choose a team, not just to have one worker. It's great to have one key worker, but it's really important to have at least, depending on the child, anywhere from 3 to 6 on their team, so that no one's ever left without supports, and that it's always someone that knows them. So I would never put someone in on a support shift that doesn't know that child. If you have not worked with them and done a buddy shift, then you will not be put on that shift. Whilst it may kill me, I will cancel that shift before I make the situation unsafe, because it can be. So that's what I do, and I think that's really important, and that's something that I do that's different, I think, to most organisations. And then we don't always get it right. Sometimes that's not a great match, so then I'll work on that, and then we'll try again. But that's something that I do that's really important to me, and that I think sets us aside from some of those bigger organisations, and I'd like to see more of that in our industry. We also, with our seal houses, we set a seal house up that fits the particular participant. So it's not a one-shop fit for everybody. Like, for example, our big boy, Ashton, he has a hammock that's inside the house that we replicated from his OT, because we knew that hammock was a great calmer for him. And so we put that inside his house. Like, we had to get an engineer in, again, at my cost, because I wanted him to have the best possible life and experience that he possibly could. He loves a swing. We went through about 5 swings that he broke, all of them every time. So we had to get, again, an engineered swing that was heavy duty metal that we also had placed outside. And we reinforced his entire house. We've had to be quite innovative in how we have fitted out his house, because he tends to, his other side job is demolition. So he likes to do a bit of demolition in the house. So we just troubleshoot that every single time, and we make it as best that we can for him, and as safe as what we can for him, because he's not approved for STA at this current moment. And again, that's at my cost. But that's something that I do because I want these children and young adults that we support are not dollar signs, they're humans. And sorry, again, I'll get emotional. And they deserve that. They deserve the best. And it's really important, while we're on that subject, I'm really passionate about stakeholder meetings. When I worked for the big orgs, I never attended one. Like, I was never asked to attend one. And I find that that's really sad, because I can't best support someone if I'm not communicating with their whole entire team. Communication is key, and so we have them all the time, and if there's an issue, we contact who we need to sort it out, and we have meetings. I train my staff, so all my staff, if there's a behaviour support plan, they have we have meetings, and they get trained in that behaviour support plan by the BSP, because that's so important, so that we can deliver the best possible support to these young adults and children. It's also important that all of us, like I have meetings with schools all the time. I'm heavily involved in the children that we support schools. We communicate. If there's a problem, we talk about what's happening. Are you guys having that here? Because without that, I can't best support. I'm constantly in communication with my families. So for me, I know every single family. I know every single support staff member I have. I know every single child that we have. If there's a question that needs to be answered, you can call me. Anyone can call me and say, hey, what about this? And I can answer that for that child, because I make sure that I'm across everything. So when I'm not I still do a lot of support work. I'm not in the office much. It's not my favourite place to be, other than stakeholder meetings, support meetings, that type of stuff. I work still on the floor, and if I'm not doing direct one-to-one supports in training people or new participants, then I'm if I can see, I read every single incident report. We have group chats for every single participant. I'm reading them every day, and then I can see that there might be problems. So then I go in and I troubleshoot that, and I sit with my staff and we work out why that's happening. I'll then do buddy shifts again with those staff if I feel that they need some extra training. The other thing that I look for, and I think something that I find is a problem for me, is finding good staff that so when I'm interviewing, because I'd still like to do all the interviewing myself, sometimes that can't happen, but I really prefer it. I don't look for experience. I don't particularly care if you have experience, but what I need from you is this. If you don't have heart, then you're no good to me, because my children and young adults, they know if you're there purely just for a paycheck or if you're there to really make a difference. And they tell me that. And even my children that are non-verbal, they still tell me if that support worker is there for the right reasons. You should know your babies really well, and we do that well. We do that remarkably well, and I'm really proud of my company for that. It's the time that we put in to really get to know these children and young adults, so that we can support them and capacity build. We're not glorified babysitters. That's something that I say all the time at work. Often people think support work's really easy because you go to the movies, you go 10-pin bowling, and there's just so much more to it than that. There's a lot of people that do that, and if that's a company that provides that, that's great. We do those things, but always within that, we have capacity building. So therefore then that particular young adult would pay for their 10-pin bowling and ask for it and say what they need, and then use their money, and so there's capacity building there. There's always room for capacity building in anything that we're doing. So that's really important, and I think they're things that we do well. Yeah.
So I can see that there's lots of benefits in that approach, as far as obviously it's very person-centered, it's around the needs of the participant. You're obviously catering for that participant, but also involving everyone who's needed. So I understand the benefits, but can you see what some of the challenges in your approach might be? Yeah,
and look, I think that comes back down again to the staffing situation.
Yeah.
It's our industry currently, it is the support workers market, really. They can pick and choose, and it's finding the right staff that fit and align with my values, because that I can't just have anyone in there. I need to know that when I'm not there, that those people are doing exactly how I would, and love. And I will say that word, love those children just as I would, and care for them and their families. Like we provide we don't just support the participant, we support their entire family. I have deep, beautiful relationships with our families, and it's so important, because some of these guys, especially with our young children, are struggling.
Yeah.
Like they are struggling, and it is sad. So I need to see... that's my biggest challenge I face, really. And then some of it comes into the NDIS. The other side of it is funding. Yeah. So a lot of children don't get a good funding, and they really should, because this is where the changes can start.
Yeah.
It's no good throwing money later down the track, when we could have been capacity building so early, and we haven't been. So, we'll probably touch on parental responsibility a little bit later in this interview, but that... they're my big challenges, is funding, the fight to get the funding, and staff, really. And for me, because I do approach it in the way that I do, I understand as I get bigger, I'm going to face the challenge of I can't be there for every single one. So I can't do that. But what I can do is work with the staff that I can see, let's call them mini-me's, how lucky, so that they can, that I can then have other people that have that same drive and passion as me, and that can. So, I mean, look, recently a government agency that we work with, one of their workers in a meeting had said to me that that I care too much and that I'm not professional for that reason. I disagree with that. You can do both. So when I'm working with my children, and I say my children because they feel like that to me, they're not looking for my professionalism. They don't really know what that is. But what they're looking for is the fact that I care for them, that they feel safe with me, that I can create a space and an environment that they feel loved, because they know what that is. And they're looking for that because they're away from their mums and dads and their people that they are used to being with, where they feel those things. So it's really important that when they're with us, that they feel that too. So they're not looking for the professional approach, they're looking for all those other things. Yeah. And I think that you can combine both. Yeah. So I can still be professional, but I can give that support that, for me, children need. Yeah. Because they are children. Yeah. At the end of the day, they are little people and they need to feel safe and loved and cared for. Yeah. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I think when I was working as an early childhood teacher, working with children with autism, but also cerebral palsy, we had this big shift in our regulatory environment in childcare, where we were no longer childcare workers, we were educators. And there was this big shift of professionalism that, you know, even things like hugging children became taboo. And it's like, hang on a second, I've got a 6-month-old who I'm holding for 10 hours a day. At some point I have to have physical contact with them, plus children need that or they die. I have always kind of had, I think early childhood is really important, and I think being aligned with teaching is important, and I think education is important. But I think what we miss in that approach to educate is caregive. Absolutely. And children need caregiving as much as they need education.
I could not agree more. And I can tell you, every single family that chooses us, and I can confidently say this, do that because they see that just that love that we all have for their children, and that's what they want. They don't want me to, when a child says to you, I love you, I can't respond back with, we love our family, but we like our friends. I am not doing that. So in a big org, I had to do, that's what they wanted. And I said to my boss in that organisation, I will not do that. So you will either have to send me on my way or just accept my way of support, because I just would never do that. Don't get me wrong. We have I'll use an example, a particular young woman that we support who's in her early 20s. She can't differentiate what's a safe way in the community to approach someone. So we don't do hugs, and for her, for that reason, because that's the best thing. But for that, we have a trade-off. So she calls me Auntie Kristi. So that's what we get. So, and her family love that. So she's still getting that need. And she'll tell me she loves me, and I tell her I love her back. But we do an elbow. Look, on the occasional, a little occasion, we might have a sneaky little snugs, but I say that's just the one for the week. Otherwise, it's an elbow. So,
boundaries.
But absolutely.
And that's capacity building, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So for her, we can't do what we do with a lot of our other participants. But that's because that's tailored for her and it's best for her. But in general, it is, again, yes, they are children and they need to feel that. And their families want that. They do not want you to be cold and like a stone with them. They want to know that their babies are being cared for. Because sometimes we have these children for a long, like lots of hours in a week, and they need that from us. And they need to learn, that's how they reciprocate that back. That's how they know that that's... And again, that's how they feel safe. That's how everyone feels safe.
It's funny, I don't know if I've ever told you the story, but I started working with children with disability for one boy. His name's Mohammed, and he has cerebral palsy, and I was working in a childcare centre. I started working there when I was 16, and I was happy working with children in general until I met Mohammed, and he changed my life. And I cared for him in the childcare centre. His mum was only a few years older than me, and was trying to study to become a teacher herself. And I walked into the yard one day and I saw Mohammed sitting there, couldn't walk at that stage. He was, I think he was 4. And I fell in love with him. I don't know if you're allowed to say that, but I did. And I would go on my lunch breaks and no one would do anything. And I would look out of the lunch break room and see him face down in the sandpit. And I'd be like, there's 4 workers out there and no one's going to pull him up. He can't get up himself. So I then started taking him into the lunchroom with me at breaks. Then his mum, who she knows every loophole for every government system, she's very resourceful. She found some funding for me to become his SUPS worker at the time. And I I worked with him, and then I studied inclusive education. So for him, and I'm, he's now 22. It makes me feel really old. But I think of him as my godchild, even though he's a different religion than me. And like I, for many years, was the only person who would babysit him, and his mum's become my friend over many years, and he's had siblings who are, same age as my children, and he really did change my life. And I think at any point in time, if I had said, well, that's not professional and I'm not going to do that, well, no, he did need a cuddle. And if I'm working with him and, I cared for him while his mum went on her honeymoon to Paris. I think I had him for 2 or 3 weeks while she went to Paris, and I am somewhat replicating a mother in that time. He does need a hug. He does need someone to care when he needs, or he's lost his hearing aid or whatever it was. And I think that if I was the type of person that was really clear on my boundaries and was like, oh well, no, I can't talk to you outside, and no, I can't babysit for you, or no, I knew his family, his mother, his single mother at 18 years old with a child who's had 15 operations in a short period of time. She needed someone who cared about her and who cared about her son, and she saw that in me. And I think actually I've benefited more from knowing him than he ever did from me, because he's changed so much of my life. But I think it's really that relationship that you have with families that can't be replicated by anything else. It's that human element that you can't bottle. It's not a recipe you can teach someone. It is just the feeling that they have, that they know you see them, they feel cared, and you create that safe space.
Absolutely. So many of our families feel very lonely.
Yeah.
And they feel very isolated. And we try to connect them with other families of ours. And we've got a few mums at the moment that have been doing things together, which we really love. But that isolation, even sometimes from within their own families, because people are sometimes scared. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to support that particular child and their needs, and so they tend to move away from that, not know how to help. It's not that they don't want to; they just don't know how to do that. So for us, that connection with families, and I mean, I don't just, again, so for example, some of our siblings, because often our siblings get forgotten, and they're just as important as our babies that we're supporting. So in my own time, I'll go and do things with them. So one particular little boy, his brother we support, and I go to his soccer games, and I've taken him out for the day, and we'll go and do things that are just for him, so that he feels special, because he knows that Kristi takes his brother out, but I'm not getting to go out. I'm not getting these special things, so I'll go and do that. And some of our other staff have adopted that, and they'll say, hey, is it okay if I do this? And I say, absolutely you can. That is okay, because you are allowed to care, and you're allowed to do these things so that the other family members feel very special too. And, we have mums that are in some really, really desperate places at the moment, and we listen to them and we chat to them, and when I can, I'll go out and just spend some time there and just hear what they've got to say, and have a chat to them and stuff. And all of those things are what make our company different from others. I understand that not everybody may want to do that, but if you really want to create a space and an environment that is collectively supporting all involved, because to support just the participant and not get to know the family, you're doing a disservice to yourself, and you're doing really a disservice to them as a family, because you can better support when you can see the whole environment.
It's only half of the puzzle.
It is, really. It absolutely is. And I'm proud of that for us, and I love our families. Like, I love them. And my big boy that I was talking about earlier, I have, it's a 3-way share care. So between his parents, we recently lost his dad, but between his 2 parents and myself, it is a love that we have for what I will say our son, that we adore that boy. And the 3 of us, up until recently, we wanted to create a life for him and we collaboratively.
It's that partnership.
It is, because I'll have him for the rest of his life, because I'm certainly not letting him go. And I will make sure that, that house I bought, in my will, it states my children can't sell it, because that child, I want him, that's his home. I wanted him to have a home, and that's what he's got. So it is important that we do this right, That it is important that we use heart. It is important that we see these people as humans. They are not dollar figures. We do not. People often say, "How have you created this in a short space of time?" And I think they think that that it's easy. It's not easy. But I've gotten to where I am because people can see that we really want to make a difference. It is about creating, and it's about education. Often parents will say to me, "How can you get our child to do this? We can't do it." I'm not their parent. Doesn't matter who the child is. Children most likely, I've got 5 myself. They don't want to do what you say, but not only that, when you become a parent of a child with a disability, there's no manual. You're not expected to know how to raise these children. It takes a village, and it takes support workers, and they're just raising one child with a disability, so they don't have the experience that I do, where I'm raising lots of children with families. So I have the experience, and I can pull from I call it a little basket of tools. So what works this week may not work next week. And it's really about educating yourself and watching your children, because they teach us. Everything I know about autism is not because I've read it somewhere or an expert's told me, or I'm happy to listen to all that, and I do that. I continue to educate that way. But it's my experience, and it's the children. They tell me, they teach me every day. So I've got such a bigger basket than my families do, because they're only learning how to parent one child, where I've learnt to parent 200 children.
And you're also one step removed. So what's emotional for them is, it's obviously emotional for you, but not as emotional.
Yes, but you're right. I can come in and read the situation totally separate, and I can say, I got to do this, but you may not like what I've got to do, but this is how I'll get the result. But we've got to do this. We've got to be a little tougher today. So, but we'll get the result, because that's, recently we had a young man come into SIL, and I did a handover with another company that had him, sorry, not SIL, for STA, and we had another man did hand over with me that they'd provided some STA as well in the past, but he said he won't wear clothes, and he urinates everywhere, and other things, and he won't do all these things. He won't do. And I said, "Oh, that's okay." I said, he'll have clothes on and stuff. And he goes, "Good luck." And he goes, "And he won't wear shoes." And I'm like, "Okay." And he spits his meds, and I go, "Okay, no worries." And all it took was just showing him. I read his behaviour support plan. I read all his paperwork, and it said that you needed to show a connection with him. He needed to know that you were really there for him. So we built that. He wore clothes the entire weekend. He wore shoes. He never had one accident. And I trained my staff, and we had a beautiful weekend with him. We worked out a way to give him his meds without him spitting them out, and he didn't spit his meds out. So it just, that company was happy to accept that. Because that's what they were told that happens. So they didn't do anything to try and fix that. They didn't do anything to problem solve that. That's not what we're there for. We can problem solve all of those things, and we can absolutely make a difference to these children and their families' lives. So, he's looking at coming into SIL, so I'm prepping now, and we're getting him ready for that. It's all about
meeting them where they're at, right? Meeting them where they're at, figuring out what are their needs and tailoring it for their needs, not just going, okay, well, the textbook has told me that you do these things. It's like you're completely customizing and tailoring your approach to what you're reading. So it's that not even reacting, but providing options in the moment that are going to work. Almost like you're triaging.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll try something, and if that doesn't work, then you'll try the next thing, because there will always be a way. It just takes time sometimes, but there will always be a way. There was a few things that I couldn't get to that weekend, and I said, just give me some time, but we'll get to it. Another young man we've got who we're putting into SIL, he's been rejected by 14 companies. 14 companies, because he's too hard. He's level 3 autism. He's quite aggressive at the moment. There's a lot going on for him. His family is at extreme breaking point. I did handover with his mum the other day, and we had a little cry together. She's feeling very emotional about SIL. Often when I float SIL with a family, I do that 2 years prior. because it takes such a long time for them to get their head around it, because it's really hard, because the guilt is quite high. Even with our big boy, I remember when we started talking about it, there was so many emotional conversations around that. We had so many tears from all of us, because we were just, it was such an emotional thing. And that's what I'm facing currently with this family. But what that will provide, because when we have a child with a disability, we tend to think that we have to, it's our responsibility to have them for the rest of their life. We can't put them into SIL. But we don't say that about our other children. So we know that our children are going to grow up and leave home. So these children, so should they. They don't want to be stuck at home with you guys either. That's what I say to them. I go, they want to leave, mate. They're sick of you. So, and so were your other children. And you were happy for them. You know, don't get me wrong. When our children leave home, we feel sad. But we're excited for their next adventure. And these guys deserve that. They should have that too. Exactly what our other children have. So, and then what that then becomes is, it becomes a really nice space for the parents, because they get to be their parents again. They get to enjoy them in that moment when they come and have dinner with them, or, you know, they go to a family event together, whatever that may look like for them. But they get to enjoy them as their parents. They're not their carers anymore. They're not burnt out anymore. They're not exhausted. They're not barely making it through a day, because that's what I see.
No, I feel like that with my children.
You know?
I have a disability. I think.
And that, look, even for me as a mother, mine are older now, but when they were growing up, of course we all feel like that. And then you add a child with disabilities and extreme, that there's some, you know, no sleep deprivation is the biggest thing I see in my families, and it creates such a really tough environment. And so you put all that together, it is tough work. So but 14 companies rejected this young boy because they don't want to have to, they probably don't have staff trained. So that's my other passion. It's about training staff to support these complex clients that require, because you can take these guys on, but if you don't have the right staff, like when I pick them for, let's use Ashton again, I have to pick the right staff for him, because he likes to come in with a good quick jab, and a normal reaction from someone is to respond to that. So I have to make sure that my staff know that that's not acceptable and possible, that you have to respond differently, because this young man requires that. And, you know, he's charming and beautiful, and he will be challenging, but he reels you back in with his absolute gorgeous person that he is. So, it is so important, and look, it could be a lack of training, and that's something that we're looking at to put into our company, and to possibly train other companies, because I am good at that. Complex behaviours, I work with a lot of big boys that are very complex and very violent, and I'm very confident in that space, and I absolutely thrive in that space, actually, because I see such big changes, like so many big changes, but you have to have trained, confident staff. And I think maybe that's where other big companies may lack that, but we make sure that we have that, we keep it safe, and then we want to adopt that for other people to be able, so that all of these children can be, because I can't have them all, obviously, so we need other companies that can do that. So that's really important too.
And where do you see your organisation in the future?
So touching back on that level 3 space, so that's something I'm really passionate about at the moment, because it is lost. There is a lot of families out there currently that are just floating. They're just surviving because they've got nobody that will take their children. There's a lot of domestic violence in our industry, with children doing that to their families, to their parents. It's not talked about a lot, but it's a really important subject, and something that I think we should talk more about. So for me, we would like to provide SIL accommodation. That's something that we're really focusing on at the moment, for the more complex level 3 children, or young adults, I should say, that we can provide a really safe, tailored environment for them. We can set up their houses to their likes. We can put things inside those houses that create that space, that make them calm, happy, and we can provide, you know, when I first had Ashton, he had no community access, so he never went anywhere. And then as soon as I got him into my company, he now goes to the beach, 10-pin bowling, to a cafe. He bought a donut the other day at a cafe and sat down and ate it. He paid for it himself. You know, we have to obviously guide him in that and support him heavily in that, but he can do all those things now. So that's where I would really like to see my company go, and to provide that safe space for our forgotten children, our forgotten young adults. Yeah.
So if other providers want to reach out to you to discuss your model, how can they contact you?
They can go to our website, Live Your Best Life. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today and talking all about really leading with heart.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on another enlightening episode of Innovate for Impact. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations and innovative ideas that drive positive change within the NDIS space. Remember, together we're shaping a future where innovation and impact go hand in hand.